All right, my friends, welcome to another episode. Now, if you've ever wondered, where do I go for the right information? There's so much stuff out there, and you're just bombarded with things, and so many things just disprove the next thing. Well, this is the episode you want to listen to. More importantly, my guest is someone that you're going to want to follow afterwards. He puts out more consistent content than any coach that I know, but it's also research-driven, validated, and tested in the trenches because he's a very active in the trench coach. Coaches clients that are getting bikini ready, to clients that need to lose that first 100 pounds, to clients who are working around nagging injuries. And his name is Cody Boom McBroom. Yes, that is his real name. Well, the Boom Boom is probably not, but he'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. But he's going to cover some really important things, like how to track some biofeedback metrics as to why maybe you're not losing weight and yet your calories are in control and you're in line with exactly what you think you're doing. So this is a packed podcast filled with great insights and lessons. So without further ado, let's get this thing rolling. All right. Well, Cody, welcome to the show, man. So, yeah, definitely fill us in. Tell us your story.
Man, thank you for having me on. It's an honor, man. I've known you for a long time, so it's cool to circle back and do something like this. But my story is the typical fat kid story, man. I grew up kind of like a black sheep in my family, actually. It was pretty weird because I was always chubby. I was never obese, but I was always chubby. I was always kind of like the fat kid in my circle because I was always overweight. But my brother was skinny. My parents were athletic and lean, and they put me in sports. I didn't sit around and play video games. I was always outside. But for some reason, man, I was just always a fat kid. And I think it comes back to poor health choices. You know what I mean? I didn't eat well as a kid. We didn't know any better. And there wasn't a lot of good information when I was young. So I don't think my parents were trying to get me to eat healthy either. But I just grew up overweight, and it anytime you're overweight, you're going to have quite a bit of confidence issues or self-esteem issues. And I think just growing up that way, avoiding the lake, avoiding the pool, being the last kid running the mile, not being able to do, like when I was in school, and you probably had this too, actually. And I know there's no way they do it now, which is now that I have a daughter, I'm like, there's no way in hell I would let her do this. But we used to have that rope that goes all the way to the ceiling in the gymnasium, and they would let us climb it. And there was like a PE activity where we had to climb the rope.
Now you have to sign like a 30-page Spartan waiver or something to do that.
Right. Well, it's pretty dangerous too. I mean, there's tall ceilings, but I could never climb the rope. That used to get to me. We had a chin-up test in 4th grade. I remember it specifically at the school. I was going to Hedden Elementary, and I couldn't do a chin-up to save my life. And it was just embarrassing, growing up that way, especially because my brother was that kid that no shit, like all he ate was chicken nuggets. And until he was probably like 18 years old. It's actually really funny, but he always had abs. He always had a six-pack. He was a forward playing soccer, and I was stuck in the defense because I just wasn't fast enough. And it was just kind of like years and years and years of lower confidence because of that. And I hid behind humor. I hid behind anything I could to just avoid having to bring that up. You know what I mean? I avoided scales, avoided the mirror, avoided everything. But it wasn't until I was like 18 years old that it actually really dawned on me. I went through 2 injuries in high school. So I finally got into soccer enough to where I started kind of shedding weight. I still wasn't lean by any means, but I was lean enough to actually run fast. I made the varsity team. I was super excited, tore my meniscus, had surgery, gained some weight, started kind of rehabbing the best way I could, came back to play soccer, made varsity again, tore my ACL in the same knee. So it was like 2 back-to-back injuries that put me out. And so I graduated high school after that, and I just gained weight because my friends were off playing college ball. Like I had a couple friends back home that were just getting into just bad things, going down a bad path. And I kind of felt alone. I didn't have any drive. I didn't have any motivation. I didn't play any sports anymore. My knee was still not in good shape because I didn't do the proper physical therapy. I had put on weight. I'm 5'9", 5'10". So at this point, I'm like 210 pounds, which is heavy for me. Right now, I sit at 165 to 170 pounds, pretty lean. And this was like the heaviest I've ever been. So at that point, I think it was just, it sounds funny, but it was just kind of a cold turkey thing, man. I remember specifically going to school for something I hated. It was just business in general, but I just wasn't passionate about it. The plan was to go to school, just get the degree, and then my dad was going to hook me up with a job in the oil industry. He sold oil, and I could talk really well and communicate really well. So it was like, you'll be an oil salesman, you'll make good money, and it is what it is. But that just didn't fire me up at all. And I remember sitting in my basement. It was the first time I actually stared at myself. And I think this is kind of where my aha moment came for my transformation. It was the first time I just really looked at myself. And I mean, honestly, butt-ass naked, just standing in front of the mirror and just analyzing my body for the first time in my life, because I just wanted to avoid actually looking at what I didn't like for so long. And I was just real with myself. And it was just kind of like, man, what are you doing? You know, you're 18 years old. You have a whole life ahead of you. You've lived overweight. You've hated your weight this whole time. I might have been 19 at this point, but I was in college, was going to school for something I hated. Didn't have a lot of friends back home anymore because a lot of them were off playing college ball or just going to school. And it was the first time I was like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm done. I got to change. And I just went cold turkey, man. I threw away all the bullshit I was eating in our house. I stopped drinking soda, which I was drinking a ton of soda back then. I don't know how I was consuming so much sugar. But I just went cold turkey and I just changed everything. And it was really just being completely transparent with myself and looking at what I didn't want to face for so long that made me kind of snap out of it and shift everything I did. And that led to, I mean, a lifestyle change, a career, a whole bunch of stuff that we can get into. But that was kind of like where I really changed. And from then on, man, I started doing a lot of different things and I shed a lot of weight. I actually got down to 155 pounds. So from 210 to 155, 160. And from there, I started trying to build muscle. So I've gained weight since then because I've been training for so long. But it was a big weight loss for me at that age. And I tried everything wrong at first, and it took me a long time. And I tried every fad and diet and everything you can think of, everything I steer my clients away from doing, I tried. But yeah, man, it was that final moment of just living in a body I hated so much. And I had to look at it dead in the eye and finally admit that I didn't like where I was. And the only way I wasn't going to be there anymore is if I actually was willing to do something about it.
Dude, that's so powerful. I mean, just the fact that you stood in front of the mirror and had that like aha moment. I mean, if you didn't do that, I can't even imagine the lives that wouldn't be transformed today from your transformation that turned into you being able to coach so many people. So yeah. Obviously, like that's a powerful thing. Do you think everyone that goes on a transformation kind of has that moment? I mean, people that I keep talking to, it's like this level of looking at themselves for real for once, and they're just like, whoa, what am I doing? And it's just, whether it's a level of disgust or frustration or just this complete turning point. Do you feel like almost everybody needs to go through something like that?
Yeah, man, I think it's just like success, right? Like, I don't think anybody will be successful if they've never failed at anything, because that teaches you so much. But it's hard because, I mean, like I said, dude, for 18, 19 years, I was overweight and I ignored it. And I just laughed when my friends would pick on me or make fun of me or call me names. I just kind of laughed it off and I ignored it. I never talked about it, not with my family, not with anybody, because I just didn't want to face the fact. Right? I didn't want to face the reality that I was overweight and I was unconfident. I didn't like what I saw and I didn't want to be that person. So it's really tough, but I do think everybody has to go through some kind of, I mean, honestly, kind of negative moment, right? Because I wasn't happy at that point, but I had to admit that. I had to realize that. I had to openly say to myself, like, man, for lack of better terms, you're fat. You don't look good. You're not healthy. You're tired. I used to have to walk up this hill in the college parking lot. I went to community college in Des Moines, Washington, and there was this huge hill that I had to walk up from the parking lot every day. I remember getting to class like sweating every day because I'm just like, dude, this hill is so big. But I'm thinking like, man, it's not that big. And you're 19, 18 years old. You should not be sweating from walking up a parking lot hill. So I had to admit those things. I had to look at myself. I had to openly say, like, I don't like where I'm at. And then make some sacrifices. You know what I mean? There was a lot of things that I was doing that didn't contribute to being lean or living healthy because I enjoyed partying with the friends I had. I enjoyed eating shit food. I didn't like the gym. I was very intimidated by the gym. So I stayed away from it. And I had to like openly admit and realize, like, you know what? There's going to be a period of time in my life where I have to get a little bit uncomfortable, do some things I don't like doing, and cut out some things that I do like doing that probably aren't super healthy for me.
Yeah, that's so spot on. So, I mean, there's probably people listening right now that are kind of in that space where, I mean, they're able to say like, yeah, I'm not happy with where I'm at. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like this. And, you know, I've got a hill or stairs at work and I break out a sweat and I'm just not happy with it. But I do still enjoy going out with my friends and eating stuff. Like, how do you help those clients? Because I'm sure you get a lot that they come to you and they want to drop X amount of weight or achieve a goal. But then there's this lifestyle or belief or environment. How do you help them go through that journey? Like, what can you offer some listeners that are just sitting in that place right now wanting to, but just kind of stuck?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to do is take it slow. That's something I did not do. I've always been like a very extreme personality, a type A. Like if I'm going to do something, I'm all in. And that kind of bit me in the ass at the beginning. Like I said, I cut out everything. I went cold turkey on everything and was just turning to health food. And back then, like health food to me was like, oh, I'm going to eat whole wheat instead of white bread, and I'm going to drink diet pop instead of regular pop. And although they did save me calories, I did lose weight. I was trying to restrict myself from so many things that I ended up, having binges or having episodes, or I tried these diets that were like one that was so bad was the HCG diet where you like droplets. Yeah. And you eat like 500 calories. I used to work at a Rite Aid. I don't know if they have those over there, but
yep.
I used to work there and they sold them there. And at the time I was super intimidated by the gym. So I was like, well, let me do this. And I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to work out and be in front of all these people. So I did that and, I lost a ton of weight and gained all right back and then some and was just miserable. So, I would avoid all those things. And for the people who want to still have a lifestyle, it's just about, number one, find some form of accountability, because if you have zero accountability, it's really hard. And that's not like a pitch to go find a coach, because if you can afford a coach and if you want the luxury of having a coach, go do it, because I believe in coaching. I have coaches myself. I've always had mentors. But at the same time, you can join a Facebook group. You can join a community gym like the one you have, Joseph. Like you can join just different friends you have. There's so many different social settings that can create accountability. You can even just post on Facebook about what you're doing, and that creates a public announcement. It creates public accountability, and people know you're doing something. So I think that's huge, because it's going to keep you moving forward on a constant basis. Because if you don't have accountability, you don't have consistency. And obviously those two are the two foundational points to get results. But next, I would take it slow. Take one thing at a time. I personally, I have such a wide variety of clients. It really depends where they're at. I see things two ways. We can do this very habitual and kind of work through behavioral change and just look at lifestyle factors. Like maybe we don't want to track macros and look at the details of all this stuff, but we're just going to purposely add in healthy foods instead of trying to eliminate things. So I see a lot of people, and again, this is the path I went down that wasn't good at first. I was trying to make a transformation, and what I did was like, I'm going to stop eating this, stop drinking this, I'm going to stop going out with friends, and I restricted myself from all these things until I hated everything I was doing and I was miserable again. And it's kind of the opposite of what I was trying to achieve. I wanted to get out of my body to be happy, and now I'm putting myself into a position where I'm losing weight, but I'm extremely unhappy still. So I don't think that's the smart way to go. Instead, and I steal this from Precision Nutrition, full transparency, add in things instead of taking away. So if I have a client, all right, we're just going to add in more water. We're going to add in fish oil. We're going to add in more protein. We're going to add in some more greens. When they start adding things in, subconsciously, other things just come out. They have to be replaced. It's just that it's the yin and yang, right? Like as soon as I start adding in these good, healthy foods, more water, even the habit of just taking fish oil, that you're doing something positive toward your health. You will naturally start changing your behaviors and your habits that are not going to help your health and in your transformation to get leaner. So I think that's a big key component. And then knowing that 90-10 is probably the ratio you want to go, even 80-20 for like quote unquote good to quote unquote bad, or quote unquote clean to dirty. Like you can still fit those things in, and you very well should, because this, dude, you have a little kid, and like, I'm sure there's times where you want to eat with him and do whatever and have some ice cream or whatever it may be. It's the same thing
Absolutely.
with me. And my daughter's only 7 months, but I still make the excuse that she wants me to eat ice cream with her. So, but the point is like 80 to 90% of the time, I'm really focusing on getting as much nutrient dense foods in my body. I'm focusing on fueling my performance, fueling my recovery, getting good sleep. Like if you can focus on that stuff 80 to 90% of the time, the 10 to 20% isn't going to hurt your results. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, it'll slow things down a little bit, but it'll keep you going for the next 6 months. And because of that, you're going to look completely different in 6 to 12 months versus going 100 miles an hour at it, getting to your goal in 2 to 3 months faster, and then falling off by month 6 and then kind of reversing that process. So I think that's really huge. And then the last thing would be looking at macronutrients. Macronutrients is kind of a more advanced protocol. Like we just did the photo shoot thing, and obviously that's something we used for that because there was a very specific goal at hand. But it goes both ways. Like I have a lot of clients that are very lifestyle oriented, but they're just naturally an analytical person. So because of that, I implemented macros from the start because they like to see numbers. They like to see data. They like to know like, okay, this is like a budget. And if you look at a financial budget, if I gave you $200,000 this year to spend and you spent $180,000 on a brand new Jaguar, you're kind of screwing yourself over for your bills the rest of the year because you only got 20 grand left. So it's the same thing that kind of applies with these people with macros. Like, okay, you have 200 grams of carbs to play with. Okay, cool. If I go get a double stack of pancakes, I'm out 170 grams of carbs. That's going to be really hard to even have vegetables for the rest of the day because I only have 30 left. But if I have one stack of pancakes, that's only 85 grams of carbs. I can manage the rest of the day with 125 grams of carbs and still fit in my fiber and my fruit and my vegetables. And sometimes that's okay for the grand scheme of things. So there's different ways to approach it. I think the big key that I'm kind of trying to put all this into a nutshell is go slow, like understand that you're not going to be perfect 24/7 and you shouldn't be. And then with macros and getting really specific, it's all about personality type. Everything should be individualized to you. There is no right diet. Whether you're paleo, you do intermittent fasting, you like keto, you want to do macros, very habitual based. It really doesn't matter. They all move to the same exact goal. It's just about who fits best with what strategy.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, so my takeaways are make sure you're going slow so that you're not going to sabotage, you're not going to revert back, have some form of accountability, which I think is really spot on. You're saying make it a public accountability, make it to a coach, make it to a small group, but definitely that's such a big factor. And then being able to be consistent because you're taking it slow and because you have the accountability. So it seems like that just falls in line, and then making sure it meets you where you're at is kind of that last piece that you were saying. And it sounds like you've got a system and a coaching system that works for people with all of that. I've worked with you for the last 3 months to get ready for a photo shoot for those that don't know. And we did do macronutrients, but that's where I was at to be able to see all of those things and be able to dial in, which was invaluable because it was meeting me exactly where I was at. And I feel like a lot of times, even with people that need to be habitual, but you'll let me know what you think, it can be good for them to do a little bit of that just to gain the knowledge, understanding, and awareness of what different things actually are. I mean, what's your thought on that? Like doing that just initially sometimes and figuring things out.
That's actually that was exactly where I wanted to take that after you started talking. Cause I think that, a few things. When I start with somebody, even if I'm not going to go the macronutrient route, I actually always start with MyFitnessPal because I want them to see what they're consuming. I want them to have to read some food labels. I want them to analyze, like, are you getting nutrients? Are you getting sugar? Like, are you not paying attention to the condiments? Because those can add up. Like, I want people to do that. And then after that week of tracking, we might not even use macros ever again, but it gave them that base of like just self-awareness, just a taste of what they're actually doing and what could actually be holding them back. And then it also gives me it's like a GPS. If I don't know where you're at now, I can't really get you to where you want to be. So that kind of gives me an idea and some metrics and some context of where they're at. But I do think it's very important for everybody to track macros at some point. And that could be some people I have just following calories and protein, and then their carbs and fats can fluctuate. Some people don't even look at calories. They only track protein, fats, and carbs, and they just worry about those. Some just calories. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but I think the big thing is self-awareness, right? And I kind of look at it like it's almost like you're climbing a mountain, right? Like on the way up to the mountain, you start integrating these things. So maybe you start with calories, then you add protein, then you get to carbs and fats, and then you ride that until you get to the peak, which is your result. And then as you're coming back down the mountain, you're really just trying to maintain, and you can slowly start peeling those back out. So you can take away carbs and fats and let those fluctuate, but still track protein and calories. Then maybe you just watch calories. And then maybe you just track once a week just to make sure you're in the ballpark. But when you do that, you're learning a system, you're learning a structure, you're learning about your body, you're learning about nutrients. You begin to understand how much food actually is. Like, people will estimate and they're so far off and they don't even realize it. And I was that way too. You grab whether we're talking fatty meats that are really healthy for you or nuts that are really healthy for you or fruit, you can eat those in large quantities and not realize it and think that it's healthy and guess how much you're actually consuming. And then when you track it, you're like, wow, I just ate 60 grams of fat from cashews because you can just snack on them. So I think it's important for people to track just to build that self-awareness and education, because once you get to your result and you stop tracking macros, you're going to be truly intuitive with your eating. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong is, I'm just going to do this intuitively. I'm going to intuitively eat. And the reality is, intuitively, I want Ben and Jerry's quite often. So I would rather learn how to track, because now I can intuitively understand what my body actually needs, how many calories are in Ben and Jerry's and these other things. But again, man, it just teaches people, so when we get done coaching, when we get done doing macros and stuff, you can kind of go on your own and wean off the such a structured system and still maintain those results.
Yeah, no, that's great. So one piece you were starting to talk about, and I want to bring it up because you're so good about just providing education and awareness on this across all your social media platforms and your blog. I mean, for those that don't follow, we'll get all of his handles up here, and you definitely got to follow because he puts out more content than almost any coach I've ever seen, and it's so valuable. But one of the things you're starting to talk about and that I constantly see is just like biofeedback. And, we worked on that a lot. I think you brought up the mountain analogy only just because you know that I'm a huge mountain climber. It's one of my favorite things. But just you mentioned just briefly, like sleep and energy and hormones. Like you just said the words and briefed over them. But they're such huge factors for transformation. I think so many people just think like it is what we're talking about right now. It does come down to just nutrition and a lot of training, and it's not. And I'd love for you to just share your insights on those things.
Yeah, man, it's so important. And I think it sucks because there's a lot of people, I mean, as we know, the science is calories in versus calories out. So there's a lot of people that are in the science, but they're not in the trenches working with people. They're not applying this stuff, and they don't understand that calories in versus calories out doesn't work forever. There becomes diminishing returns. There's a threshold. There's a cutoff point where your body just kind of gives out or stops burning, and it's a defense mechanism, and your hormones are kind of shutting down. So I see this all the time where people are actually just had a client talking about this the other day. I told her to train less. I told her to stop doing high intensity cardio. We're just going to walk this week. And I gave her a 2-day refeed. I bumped her calories up because I could tell she was just run down because I was looking at her biofeedback, which I'll get into in a sec. And she dropped 2 pounds, and she was so confused. She was like, I've been at this plateau. I don't get it. I did less. And I'm like, your body's just fighting you. I was like, you need to chill. It's not always more is better. Sometimes your cortisol is the stress hormone, for those who don't know, is just constantly elevated. And that's going to stop your body from actually burning fat. And so when we let that cortisol response calm down and your body can actually start to adapt and recover, that adaptation phase is actually the process of you rebuilding muscle tissue, burning fat off, increasing your metabolism. So we're helping your body. We're giving you some health, and it's benefiting your body composition. And I think more people need to be aware of that, and that's why I'm so huge on it. But one of the ways I do this is I track biofeedback with all my clients, whether they're tracking macros or not. This is very, very key. So every week, everybody's looking at sleep, stress, hunger, cravings, mood swings, performance, level of fatigue. For some people, even sex drive is very important to follow if they've had issues in the past. And then on a daily basis, I have some clients track a few of those every day, like whether we're tracking digestions, hours of sleep, performance recovery, and then your hunger levels. But these things tell me a lot. If your mood is swinging, if your motivation is low, if your cravings are high, it's telling me that you probably need a deload in training. You might need a diet break. We're probably ramping things up too hard. Or I can correlate that to one of the other things, like, do you have external stress in your life? Are you sleeping less? Do you have any issues in your personal life that would be causing these problems? Because when we tie all of this together, I always kind of look at it like 2 shelves, right? We have our parasympathetic and our sympathetic shelf. And these are nervous system modes for those who don't know. And basically, parasympathetic is recovery. It's rest and digest. Sympathetic is go. It's drive. It's train hard. It's adrenaline's up. It's running away from the saber-toothed tiger in the caveman days for survival. And we have these 2 shelves, and we need them both, because if we don't create a stress, we're actually not going to build muscle. We're not going to build strength. We're not going to build power. We're not going to lose fat. We need that stress. But just as much as we need that stress, we need the recovery, because the recovery allows us to adapt to that stress. And when we adapt to it, we get better by losing fat or building muscle, so on and so forth. I think the issue with people is they go, okay, I have 6 days a week of training. I'm making sure I get 7 hours of sleep a night. I got my sympathetic and parasympathetic on lock. Like, it's evened out. And then they don't consider all the other sympathetic modes that they're going through on a daily basis. Like, are you in a deficit? Because that's sympathetic. Are you fighting with your spouse? That's sympathetic. Do you have work stress? That's sympathetic. Do you have a child? Do you have more responsibilities? Are you doing more steps per day because your job is manual labor? There's so many things, and they've actually done a lot of studies on this. The psychological stress is actually a very, very dominant on the nervous system, and it can actually put you in that sympathetic mode. So if we're outweighing sympathetic to parasympathetic, you're going to have chronically elevated cortisol levels. So one of the ways for me to understand that about a client and learn where all this biofeedback is and where they're at and how they're doing is to look at all these markers. Like, they tell me where you are neurologically and hormonally. So I talk about it a lot in my content, like you said, man. I think it's really important to educate clients because it does a few things. One, it gives me kind of a path to take them down. I know when to adjust, I know what to adjust, and I know how to adjust it to make sure that we can avoid plateaus, get over plateaus, continue to see weight loss, keep them happy, so on and so forth. But it also teaches them a lot about their body, about what they're doing, about what really creates results. And then it also gives them something else to focus on besides the scale weight. Like, I see a lot of women who are, let's say, 115 to 130 pounds. They're short. They're not obese by any means, but they have a few pounds of fat they want to lose. They're not going to see these huge weight drops, but they're so attached to the scale that that's all they want to see. So when I start tying in these other things, like, hey, you squatted more this week, you got better sleep, your energy is better, your hunger is a little bit higher, which means your metabolism is kicking up, your progress pictures are better, like all these different things. Like, the only thing that's not moving is the scale. Do you kind of feel like we should probably stop worrying about that so much, since 8 other markers are actually doing really well? And it kind of lets them like get this sense of relief, because now they go, oh, well, shit, I guess I am improving. I can't really debunk that. The scale's not moving, but all these other things are telling me that I'm doing better. So I kind of went on a rant there, so you can pick that apart if you need to. But I just think it's so powerful, and it's so important for people to understand, just to learn about themselves and to give them some kind of just different focus rather than just the scale.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, I think everybody needs to have some kind of goal that exceeds the scale. And just looking at my last personal journey with you as my coach, when we didn't see the scale move for several weeks in a row, but yet week over week, there was clearly more definition and just more leanness and cuts coming through. So it's just a testament to like all these things are tracked. And I know we hit a certain point where you're like, whoa, all right, we're pulling out some high intensity. You just need to get more sleep, and we're just going to get more basic steps. And it worked, because we were focusing on those other metrics. And I think those are like some of the missing things. People don't realize how much stress is going on in their life, for sure. So,
and dude, that's a great example too, because if we look at that science model of calories in versus calories out, it's true. And most of the time, like, you need to abide by that. But if we would have kept that high intensity cardio in, you probably would have burned more calories technically, right? But it wouldn't have worked because your body would have fought back. You know what I mean? And you probably would have held on to more water, and you probably wouldn't have looked as defined. You might not have held on to as much muscle. So there's so many things that play a role. So that's such a great example. And I said that example, and I forgot that we just did that as well. And it worked so well.
Yeah. Cool, man. So just going back to the person who's in the middle of this journey, because so many people lose weight, but then they just completely seem to fall off. They're kind of searching for motivation. And as we know, motivation is something that it requires some action first before we can even get to a place. And then we have to stay in motion to stay in a place of motivation. But what do you think someone needs in order to not revert back and sabotage? Because we see it so often. I mean, the stats are, like, hard to fully acknowledge, but a lot of people and some science says that, only about 5% of people will actually maintain their weight loss after the 5-year mark. And I know that's a really hard thing to completely track, but we do know that it's a majority of people who gain their weight back within the first 5 years. So what do you think needs to happen for someone in their mind to make sure that they stay the course? Because that's the most important thing.
That statistic is almost like hard to believe. I know it's true because I've read it a million times too, but it's just so crazy that so many people gain it back, and it sucks. It's sad. But I think there's a few things. I think one, you have to tie things back to your daily life and how much better your quality of life is because you lost that weight. And I think that's so huge, because if you just are happy because you look better, or somebody gave you a compliment or something very just I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it has nothing to do with your quality of life, really. It just made you feel a type of way. Versus, like I said, for me, like I stopped sweating when I was walking up hills. I started sleeping better. I could actually keep up with my friends when we played pickup ball. Like I started attaching it to all these other things that I was like, man, this makes me enjoy living as a human being way more. So I'm very motivated to keep this weight off because now I'm going to live a better life, period. I'm more confident. I want to go do things more often, and I tracked and I noticed these things. So instead of letting them just go by, I would stop and smell the roses. Like, man, I just smashed on the basketball court. I've never felt like that. Man, I didn't just sweat like that. And I tell somebody, I'd be happy about it. So I think it's important to notice those things and look at your quality of life, because the quality of life, not only from like a true blood marker health standpoint, but just in general, your mood, your energy, your confidence, your positivity, your family life, everything improves if you can be leaner. And I don't mean get leaner, like get shredded, but I just mean if you're not as heavy, if you're not huffing and puffing, if you have less body fat in your body, I promise you will feel better in so many different ways. So I think attaching to that is very, very key. And then the other thing would be having some kind of, whether it's internal or external, like serious purpose or why, or just reason of why you're doing it all in the first place. If you lost weight to impress a guy that you wanted to go on a date with, that's not going to last long, but if you are married for 20 years, you finally lost weight and you notice that your husband's looking at you way differently and your sex life goes through the roof, that's a better why, because your love with your partner is on a different level. That's a serious why. For those who are parents, like if you can relate it back to being able to play with your kid, like maybe you have serious, and I've heard this one a million times, you have serious low back pain and it was hard for you to get on the floor and crawl with your baby or to do on the jungle gym or anything like that. And you end up sitting and just kind of watching from the park bench. If you have a why that is getting you through that injury and making you more mobile so you can play and laugh and run with your kid, that's a serious why that's going to keep you keeping the weight off, because you want to continue to do those things. If it allows you to get back on the baseball field and you're the oldest guy on the field, but you are smashing everybody, that's probably a better why. Like you have to connect it to other things, again, other than just the scale, other than just what you see in the mirror, but quality of life things and things that you truly enjoy or things that you truly want for the rest of your life. If those things are improving because you're losing weight or because you kept the weight off, you're going to have a better and a deeper why. And I think for me, I do this with everything in my life, my business, my motivation to wake up early and read and journal and meditate and things like that. Like there's always a deeper purpose and a deeper why behind everything I do. And that's why I'm so motivated to do so much. And it was the same thing with the weight loss. Like I had a deeper why and a deeper purpose and it helped me. And like you said at the very beginning, man, my purpose was always like, people usually don't do this when they go through a transformation, but I think I was like halfway through my transformation. I still had like 20 pounds to lose, and I decided to drop out of what I was going to school for and go to school for health and fitness. I forged my dad's signature and changed my degrees without him knowing. And I wasn't even in that good shape yet, and I didn't know that much, but I knew how good I felt and how much better this was making my life, and I just wanted to help other people do that. So for me, the reason I kept the weight off is because I knew that my purpose was to help other people keep that weight off. And I couldn't do that unless I stayed true and I lived this with my full purpose. So having that deeper why, I just think is so important. I think the people that end up kind of gaining that weight back, it's a combination of not having a serious purpose or a serious why behind why they were losing it in the first place. And then also because they're not doing the first things we talked about, man, taking it slow, building habits, having a system. They take the crash course and they get ripped in 30 days, or they do the HCG droplets like I did. And it's just a matter of time before you gain weight back when you do it that route.
Powerful. Great share. So before I ask my last question, where can people find you and follow you? Because they definitely need to. Yeah,
if you it sounds weird to say Google me, but if you Google Cody Boom Boom McBroom, I doubt anybody has that name. I think that would be the easiest thing to do, but everything is Boom Boom Performance. So my website is boomboomperformance.com. We have the Boom Boom Performance podcast, and then my Instagram is where I put most of my content out, and that's Cody.boomboom.
All right. Give them a little insight then just on the boom boom, because otherwise that just sounds weird now coming at the end.
It's always weird. Like I remember my current parents-in-law, mother and father-in-law didn't ever ask this, but my ex-girlfriend years ago, I remember like her mom seeing my Instagram first, and then like I came over and she's like, "So you're boom boom, huh?" And I was just like, "Man, that sounds way worse than it is, I promise." But it came from soccer actually. So my brother, we had a history teacher. His name was Mr. Shelbert, and he always like just used to mess with my brother, and he called him Vinny Boom Boom McBroom, and then he was the soccer announcer at the stadium. So he called him Vinny Boom Boom, and then I made the team, and it was the Boom Boom Brothers. And yeah, so it's nothing crazy. It kind of stuck, and then after high school, people kept calling me it, and it just never left.
I love it. Yeah, even when I called you to set some stuff up, and you just answered and it was like boom, boom. And I was like, that's just so money. So cool, man. So last question. So what is the truth that you feel people need to hear in order to completely transform?
Ooh, that's a good one, man. That would be a really hard question for me to answer, but I've had some big insights in my life recently, and I actually just did a podcast on this, so I'm going to go with this. And I think people mistake the word can't for won't. And there's a lot of us that are saying, I can't do XYZ, right? Like I can't invest the time. I can't invest the money. I can't create the content. I can't lose weight because I have bad genetics. I can't figure this out, whatever it may be. I can't find the right girl, the right guy. There's so many things we constantly say I can't do. But if you really analyze the situation, 9 times out of 10, it's a won't. You won't do it. Because you're not willing to do the research. You're not willing to do the work. You're not willing to see what it takes. You're not willing to sacrifice some of the things in your life that are probably not moving you forward. You're not willing to do a lot of things that are holding you back. And I think that is a very profound and very kind of blunt statement for me to make. But it's so true. I can't tell you how many times in my life that I was held back or I didn't. It took me a long time to create my online business when it was what I've wanted to do since I was 18, 19 years old in college. That was always my plan. But it took me a long time because I said, I can't do this alone. I can't figure out internet marketing. I can't create a blog. I kept saying I can't. In reality, I just wasn't willing to do the work. And it's the same thing with weight loss all those years. I kept saying I can't lose weight, and I blamed it on genetics. I blamed it on my surroundings, my environment, my family, anything I could. Right. But in reality, I just wasn't willing to research what healthy food was. I wasn't willing to go in the gym and get uncomfortable. I wasn't willing to do a lot of things. And the hard part about this is we all constantly say we want this result. But if you're not willing to do the work, you can't say that you want it. So I'm okay with people saying, I just don't want to do it. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm not willing to do it. That's totally fine. But you can't complain that you're not at your destination, your goal, your outcome, if you're not willing to do the work. So I think the biggest thing people need to take in and just think about going into any transformation in any area of your life is every time you say the word can't, analyze and see if you're really just not willing to do the work. And usually, if you realize and you admit that you're not willing to do it, it changes your mindset because you realize that you actually could if you wanted to. And you begin to start making positive habits to achieve that.
Great insight, great interview. I mean, just to sum it up, go from can't to won't and realize what it is. Find your why to understand how to completely transform that can't to an understanding of what needs to be done. Take it slow, find the accountability, have the consistency, track those biofeedback markers so you know how you're doing, get a coach, and make sure it's meeting you where you're at and be willing to do the work. Like there's so much in there, and those are just my insights. Trying to sum it up, but so valuable. Thank you so much, Cody. I appreciate this very much, man.
Dude, I loved coming on. Thank you.
All right, my friends. Thanks again for listening to another great episode. Now, I do have one request. If you know of someone that's got a amazing success story, or if you know of a transformational coach or transformation authority figure with insights and lessons that need to be shared, we'd love to talk to any of these people. There's a good chance we can have them on one of the next episodes, and they continue to help us all grow as we continue to unveil the truth of what it takes to truly transform. Last thing, love for you to head on over to iTunes and hit that 5-star review button. Helps to get this message out and continue to transform more lives. As always, my friends, Coach Joseph Hawthorne, peace be the journey.